This is the You, Me, and BTC podcast.
Cryptocurrency decrypted.
Welcome to episode 39. This week, just for fun, we'll be sharing a bunch of Bitcoin facts and stats. What was Bitcoin's peak market cap? How many coins are sitting on the most valuable address? When was the first block ever mined? Stay tuned for our perspective on all that and tons more. Then later in the show, we'll be chatting about a bit of news. Greenpeace is now accepting Bitcoin donations, and Square is currently working on a new way for merchants to accept cryptocurrency. Your hosts are Tim Baker, John Stewart, and myself, Daniel Brown. Here we go.
Hey again, everybody. This is Tim again. I'm doing the intro to this again because Daniel feels like you don't want to hear his voice too much, or
I never said that.
Wants to say, I don't know. Daniel gets kind of fickle about this stuff. But I think we talked about this a while ago. One of the first live shows we did, I think we were kind of just going through some Bitcoin facts. Or what did you call it? Just data in general?
Well, yeah, we started with stats. There's a stats page on blockchain.info, and we went through that a little bit. But I don't know, I figured might as well just find some different, still interesting facts and just for fun list some cool information about Bitcoin, and we'll do a little bit of the history of Bitcoin and stuff like that. So, yeah. Yeah,
so at least the first one we're going to be looking at right now it's just called entrepreneur.com. It's kind of it's an outdated article a little bit. It's from March 2014. So some of these, I'll try to pick ones that aren't like really obviously old. Like some of the ones they talk about, like 20,000. Well, no, it says 20,000 plus, but back then that's how many computers were working on mining new Bitcoins. I'm guessing that includes mining rigs, but I don't really know. So
yeah, so some numbers like that are probably fairly different now. So
yeah, so I probably shouldn't.
Still, they're still interesting and stuff like that. So
it's 3,600 Bitcoins are approximately mined each new day.
Yeah, another just a stat worth mentioning that I saw today. It's averaging about 8.5 minutes between blocks right now, which would mean that it must be a little higher than 3,600 Bitcoins per day, just because there's more miners mining than the difficulty is accounting for. So just an interesting thought that if it was every 10 minutes that a block was found, then yeah, it would be 3,600. But right now, because mining power is still increasing, they actually find a block every, 8.5 minutes, something like that.
There's this other, this whole thing, it's not as much of an article as it is just an infographic, but there's another point on here, which I always forget about how much Bitcoin is just sitting in addresses. At least at the time the article was put out, it says the amount of Bitcoin sitting in accounts that haven't been touched since the currency began is 64%. Which,
yeah, that's crazy.
Would that mostly just be in like Satoshi's stuff, or is that all of it?
Some of it would be Satoshi's, but I've heard that he might only have as much as 1 million. And if there's about 13 and some change million Bitcoins out there. Yeah. That means that he only has, what is that, less than 10%, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think.
And this is saying that 64% of the coins haven't been touched. So that is pretty crazy. And on the one hand, it's probably a good thing, just that people are holding them or trusting them, or maybe they lost them, I don't know. But I guess you could also say it could lead to something bad someday if everyone starts selling those 64% all of a sudden. That could cause some problems, but I don't know. It's interesting. It says here there's 31,000 lines of code behind Bitcoin, which is quite a bit, I guess. It's probably fairly average for just a program. I don't know if but that still is pretty complicated when you think about it. Although I did hear, actually, I've heard lots of people complaining that Satoshi was really kind of a bad programmer. And yeah, it works, but the program itself is just kind of, I don't know, just bad style, bad setup for the program and
just
stuff.
Like
and,
not clean.
Right, yeah, not the cleanest code in the world.
I think I've heard that too. Yeah.
I've heard people say that's one reason why they think that Satoshi's is probably one guy and not like a bunch of people, because I guess some people have thought that Satoshi might be a bunch of people, because when you code with other people, it's mostly so that you can clean up each other's stuff.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. When he first wrote it, he probably didn't care too much about what other people saw it like. He just wanted to put it together and make it work.
Yeah, and sometimes things that are like obvious to you may not be obvious to someone else, or like things that are like logical to you or not to somebody.
Here's an interesting little bit here that I've heard of this story before, but I thought it was kind of hilarious. A journalist from Bloomberg was given a Bitcoin on live TV in December 2013. It was promptly stolen by a viewer. Apparently, somebody showed his private key on TV, and it was just taken. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, I decided to look that up to see what it really happened. Apparently, Bloomberg TV's, I'm looking at an article from Business Insider. He was doing the 12 Days of Bitcoin, a series for the Business News television station. While on air, Miller surprised Bloomberg anchors Adam Johnson and Trish Reagan each with $20 worth of Bitcoin. But as Johnson received the paper gift, he briefly exposed the QR code. This act was effectively like sharing a bank account number and a PIN number at the same time. Immediately, someone lifted the QR code and stole the $20. This morning, Miller reported that he had engaged the thief, someone who goes by Milky Way Masta on Reddit. The guy on Reddit said he was watching Bloomberg when they were doing the 12 Days of Bitcoin. Says the one guy opened up the certificate to reveal a QR code of the private key. Then they showed a close-up of the QR code in glorious HD for about 10 seconds. So he took it. He said he'll send it back once Matt gives me a new address since someone else can sweep the old one. He said a segment on Bitcoin security and the importance of not showing the private key, and also BIP0038 password encrypted private key wallets will be more than enough compensation. Blockchain confirmation public key of where I sent the Bitcoin. So I guess it got stolen, but I guess he sent it back. Oh. Yeah, well, actually, it turns out then Miller said it was a great lesson, so he just told him to keep the $20.
Oh, nice. I bet there's people out there who would say that, look, Bitcoin has problems. It can get stolen so easily. Which, in a strange sense, I mean, yeah, it did get stolen pretty easily, but it's also worth saying that it's not Bitcoin's fault. Bitcoin did nothing wrong. It was just like he shared his key with the world. I mean, if you give your key out to your safety deposit box,
if you just make copies of it and drop it everywhere, someone's eventually going to get it.
Yeah, exactly.
And give exactly where the box is.
Exactly. I mean, a bank deposit box is a little different because I think you need ID and everything, stuff like that. But yeah, in general, if something's locked up and you give everybody the key, everybody's going to get it. It's not the item's fault. It's your fault for giving everyone the key, so.
And this little segment has been the winners and losers where Daniel got that from. It also talks about where that, I remember hearing this story, James Howells. It's the value of Bitcoins that was on his hard drive when he accidentally threw it away into a landfill.
Oh, yeah.
And it was $7.5 million. I haven't heard anything more about that, about anyone recovering it, but.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I'm sure also that the value has significantly changed since then. But yeah, it's still a lot of money that I'm sure he lost in that hard drive.
And then on the other side of that, I remember hearing about this too. It was the guy from Norway, Christopher Koch. His initial Bitcoin investment was $28, 17 pounds. And when he remembered he had bought it, it was worth more than 500,000 pounds or $827,750.
Aren't those euros, Tim?
Probably. I probably can't read them right. Euros.
I think it's like a really fancy curly E. I'm pretty sure that has to be euros.
It's probably
but,
a euro, I'm sorry.
I mean, I know some people do still use the British pound.
Yeah,
but
Norway doesn't.
There's one little graph here that I don't know if the graph is actually a graph of the price or if it's just an example of a price swing, but it shows a pretty sharp curve and a gap, and it says, 80%, and it says the percentage of its value that Bitcoin has been known to lose in just a few days, which is pretty crazy to lose 80% in a few days. I don't know when the exact date is that must have happened, but I believe it. It probably has happened, so that's really crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that graph's a little like unscientific, but
Yeah, I don't think it's an actual graph of the Bitcoin price. I think they just drew a drop, but I still believe it.
yeah.
No, I didn't know this, but it mentions in here that Lamborghini was the first company to accept Bitcoins in exchange for cars.
Really? That's
Yeah.
crazy. I never would have expected that. It says here 4.5 to 5% is the percentage of Bitcoin's economy believed to have been made up by the Silk Road before it was closed down. And the Silk Road, the original one is gone, but there are several alternatives out there which probably still make up a good percentage of the economy, which is interesting.
I'd say it's probably less now, though.
That's true. You could say that, the black markets have probably grown. I don't know. They have, just because Bitcoin has grown. But at the same time, you're probably right, Tim. All of the other markets have probably grown a lot more or a lot faster. So even if the black market has grown, the percentage has probably gone down just because Bitcoin's now used in so many other ways too. So I could see that.
I think it's funny that it's only 4 to 5% because it seemed like for a while people were like, oh, the Silk Road got taken down. That means Bitcoin is done with or whatever.
Well, yeah, after it got taken down and before, people would be like, oh, Bitcoin is so evil. The only thing people use it for is to buy drugs. It's terrible.
Yeah, and even besides that, I remember people telling me, like, is Bitcoin going to, like, crash now that the Silk Road is gone? And I'm like, no, the Silk Road doesn't really have anything to do with Bitcoin besides that people use it on there. Like, is the dollar going to collapse because of black markets or like regular black markets? I don't know.
Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing with Mt. Gox that we always said. Yeah, Mt. Gox went down. It was a stupid company.
I think the Mt. Gox thing makes more sense than the Silk Road because at least Mt. Gox was like an exchange, like one of the bigger exchanges.
Yeah.
Like the Silk Road is just more like a marketplace.
Right. OkCupid is the dating site that allows you to meet your potential loved one and accepts Bitcoins. So now you can buy love with Bitcoins. I never knew that.
Well, there's also escort services, but people
Well, yeah,
argue
Tim,
what...
I already knew about those, obviously.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, obviously Daniel has a lot of fun.
Speaking of that, we should talk about that guy we met at Bitcoin in the Beltway.
Wait.
You don't
that
remember
homeless
this?
guy.
Oh, yeah. Wait, we mentioned that a little bit, didn't we, when we were on our way home and did that recording? I think we might have mentioned it then.
Yeah, maybe we did.
But yeah, we did get offered prostitutes at a Bitcoin conference. I don't think he was actually accepting Bitcoin, but we should have asked him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he wasn't. I would assume that if you're homeless, you probably don't have access to the internet.
Yeah.
At least easily.
It was also like outside the hotel and everything. It wasn't like part of the conference or anything. It's not like he went into the conference and was like, ooh, all these people have Bitcoins. Let's see if they want prostitutes. So, yeah, there's a lot more on this infographic kind of thing if you're interested. Like we said, entrepreneur.com. You can look it up if you want. There is a different stat that I thought was really interesting that I want to share. This is from bitcoinrichlist.com, which I didn't find until today, but it actually looks pretty cool. It's just a list of all the most valuable addresses, I guess. It's pretty simple. It's really simple, I guess. But the number one address has right now about $60 million on it. That's 148,000 Bitcoins, which I thought was pretty crazy. I mean, if I had $60 million on one single piece of paper, I better be darn careful with that piece of paper, and I better not lose it. I better not, I don't know, because it's like you have to keep it safe, so why not make multiple copies? But if you have multiple copies, then it's that much easier to get stolen and stuff like that. I don't know. I would not want to have that much money on one piece of paper or whatever he puts it on.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to show that QR code on TV.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Do not do that. I thought it was interesting, too, that it was actually funded just less than a month ago. So it was fairly recently that somebody was like, I'm going to fill an address with more Bitcoins than any other address. And that was fairly recently. It's not like they've been sitting there for ages and ages like some of the coins have. And the number 2 address is also kind of interesting. It's pretty close. It's only about $1 million short, almost $2 million short of the number 1 address. But still, $58 million sitting on one address. But this is, the reason I thought this one was interesting is because it's tagged with DPR seized coins 2. DPR is Dread Pirate Roberts from the Silk Road, and they're the coins that are taken from him. So, and here's the thing. I don't know for sure. I have no clue how these people tag addresses, but I would guess that these are his personal coins and not the Silk Road's coins because, well, first of all, it says DPR right there. I'm pretty sure they distinguished between the Silk Road coins and the DPR coins. And also the fact that they're still there because the Silk Road coins were auctioned off and probably transferred to other addresses, but DPR's personal coins have not been auctioned off, and so that's probably why they're still sitting right here. So, another interesting stat that I wanted to mention is the market cap, or market capitalization. I mean, there's obviously that number changes every few seconds, but I wanted to mention the peak. Well, first, I guess what the market cap actually is the value of all the Bitcoins that are out there. So if there's 100 Bitcoins and they're all worth $100, then the market cap is what, $10,000? It's just the value of all the Bitcoins put together. And that the reason that changes so much is because the price changes and because the number of Bitcoins changes every few minutes too. So that's why the market cap can move quite a bit. But it just, because it's interesting, it peaked at about $13.9 billion. So pretty close to $14 billion. And the date on that is December 4th, 2013. So the end of 2013, that was when we were going through some of the, well, yeah, the biggest bubble so far. And that's what we peaked at, about 14 billion. And right now, just looking at this chart, we're sitting around 5.5 billion, 5 billion, something like that, which it's been in a fairly steady downtrend since that peak, but I guess there have been waves up and down all throughout. It's a pretty bumpy graph, but yeah, we are fairly low compared to the peak right now. So
It's so sad.
it is kind of sad, but we talked about the price just the other day on our live show, and as we always say, I guess, on all of our shows, we're not too concerned about the low prices or anything like that. We're in it for the long haul. I think so, right, Tim? I mean, John and I talked about it, but you weren't at the live show, so do you agree that you're in it for the long run and you're not too concerned about the low prices right now?
I mean, yeah, I'm still holding to my promise whenever we made them last year. I haven't sold any of my Bitcoin since then.
Yeah, our New Year resolution, that was one of yours, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. You're doing better than me. We were also talking about how I I still haven't bought something in person with Bitcoin. I've sent people Bitcoin in person, but I haven't actually bought something in person with Bitcoin, only on the internet. So I'm running out of time to do that resolution.
Yeah, I guess Tim missed a lot last night, or not last night, whenever it was.
Yeah, 2 nights ago. Yeah, it was a great show. So if anyone cares, every Saturday night, 10 p.m. to midnight, great big Bitcoin bang.
You could be a little bit more enthusiastic than that. Like, if you really want to come, you can look at it. But
all right, guys.
like, if you want to actually do
be
something
there, guys.
with your life,
10 p.m. to midnight every Saturday.
Yes, that was better.
That's youmeandbtc.com/live is where you can tune in. So anyway, you want to tell us some of the history of Bitcoin, Tim? I mean, there's a whole bunch of dates on this list, but we'll just pick out some of our favorites.
I guess just starting in 2008, the October 31st, the Bitcoin design paper was first published. And then November 9th, the Bitcoin project registered at sourceforge.net. And 2009, January 3rd, the Genesis block was established.
So it looks like about 2 months from the design paper being published to the actual Genesis block. So, and it looks like he didn't announce it to anyone else until about a week later. So he got a little bit of a pre-mine in, I guess.
It's kind of interesting. It says the first transaction didn't happen until block 170, and that was 2 weeks. Well, not 2 weeks. It was like 10 days after the Genesis block.
Right. It was from Satoshi to Hal Finney, it says. But yeah, it's, I guess, if they really don't have much value and you're just mining them and trying to prove the concept, I guess there's not much reason to send them around or anything. Although, I don't know, I guess I would have thought that he wanted to transfer some of them just to test it, maybe.
Yeah, I would have thought that'd be like one of the first things you do.
Maybe it means just the first transaction to someone else. I feel like he had to have tested it before that. But I don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, the first difficulty increase happened on December 3rd, 2009.
Yeah, so it's almost a year later.
Right, because he just left the difficulty at the minimum. So for a while, I guess it was taking more than 10 minutes to find blocks because the difficulty couldn't go any lower. But it didn't make a huge difference because not many people were using it and stuff. So, but yeah, that's why it took so long for the difficulty to change, is because it was taking a long time to mine anyway. So you had to add a lot of power to the network in order to get the block time below 10 minutes, which is what triggers the difficulty increase. So, yeah.
And then there was Mt. Gox established July 17th, 2010.
That was the beginning of the end for some people.
Yeah. Then here for you, Daniel, because we know I don't know how, Daniel, are you still as active on the Bitcoin OTC channel?
I keep it open now and then, but not nearly as active as I used to be.
That was established or started 2010 on October 17th. So
I like May 22nd, 2010. First to buy pizza with Bitcoins, agreeing on 10,000 Bitcoins for $25 worth of pizza.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. And, pizza's pretty important, so it's worth pointing that one out.
Definitely. I mean, I would spend 10,000 Bitcoins on pizza any day if I had it, which I probably never will, so you'll never be able to prove me wrong.
it was February 9th, 2011 that Bitcoin reached parity with the US dollar on Mt. Gox, touching.
So does that mean
it was $1?
Yeah, that's the value, 1-to-1.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Here's one. I mean, the date doesn't really matter. It was January 27th, 2011, but this fact is pretty crazy. 3 currency bills from Zimbabwe, known as Zim dollars, were traded on Bitcoin OTC at the rate of 4 Bitcoins for each $100 trillion bill. So, what is that, 25 trillion Zimbabwe dollars to 1 Bitcoin at that time? You could pay off the
Yeah.
national debt with 1 Bitcoin if a US dollar was the same as a Zim dollar. December 12th, 2011, the largest amount of fees in a single transaction, 171 Bitcoins. That would be awesome. I wish I mined that block.
It's kind of funny or weird looking at all this stuff. Because I guess it has been kind of a while since it all started. Like back in 2009. That's kind of a long time ago.
Yeah, I remember at one point somebody was telling me when YouTube was 5 years old. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no way, it's only 5 years old?
Yeah.
And because I thought YouTube was just part of my life. It was something that everybody knew about, that everybody used, and that everybody did. And then to hear that it was only 5 years old, it was like, what? No way.
Kind of
Yeah.
just made you die a little bit.
It's going to be like 10 years old next year.
Yeah, exactly. What was that, Tim?
I have trouble trying to figure out what people did with most of their time online.
Before there was YouTube?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, probably most people didn't spend time online.
I remember what it was. It was AOL Instant Messenger.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day. Chatting it up.
Are you going to be online tonight?
Yeah. That's great. You had to like warn everybody in the house a couple hours beforehand. You can't use the phone in like an hour because I'm going on the internet.
Yeah, I never really actually had dial-up myself. I mean, I remember maybe a year or two of having that kind of stuff, but I never actually used the internet much at all during that time, so I never really had to warn people, but yeah, it definitely did happen.
Yeah, and then you had to have like a limit on how long you could be on there because somebody might need to get on the phone.
Right. Well, this list probably hasn't been updated in a while because the last date is April 1st, 2013, which is a year and a half ago. So this list is pretty outdated, but still interesting. And one of the ones, the last one I guess that we'll mention is March 28th, 2013. Total market cap passes 1 billion. So we're just talking about the market cap. Peaked at about 14 billion and it passed 1 billion on March 28th. That's kind of cool. What is that, 9 zeros? It's a pretty big number, I guess. Speaking of big numbers, at some point, maybe during a live show, seems like it would be a good place for it, but I think there's a Penn and Teller video about understanding big numbers, which is kind of hilarious, so we'll have to share that on a show sometime. Have you two never seen that? I thought it was probably Tim that sent it to me.
Understanding big numbers?
Yeah, Penn and Teller.
I may have seen it, but I don't really remember it, so...
I don't know about big numbers. I remember I probably sent you something about the corn stuff, if you have any idea what I mean by that.
No, I don't remember the corn.
It's about them complaining about how we pay farmers to make more corn, and then they take tax money to do that. Then they take money and they tax people who make the high fructose corn syrup. But the only reason why they make more corn is to make more high fructose corn syrup, and then they give that to us, and it's just taxed like 5 times, and they're like, no one understands what this shit is.
Yeah, I do sort of remember that now.
Yeah, I remember that one.
You're listening to the You, Me, and BTC podcast. We need your help. First of all, we'd love it if you could check out our website, youmeandbtc.com. There you can find donation addresses for every single article and episode, and we'd love it if you could make use of those. We could also use some fans and followers, so if you're willing, please visit Facebook or Twitter.com/youmeandbtc. Lastly, remember to subscribe to the show. You can do that on iTunes or sign up on our website to receive email updates. Thanks for your support.
So Daniel let us take control of his show, I guess, for the last few minutes.
Yeah. if we sully it for everybody here, we apologize. It's not Daniel's fault. He had to go get free food and actually socialize a little bit, which is a new thing for him.
This is maybe a good time to say something about how he puts in all his work for this show, and we don't really put in that much work. Yeah, he edits all the episodes and stuff, so give him a thank you.
Yeah. I mean, part of it's because anytime I do edit it, I mess it up, so I've just started not editing it and just giving it all to him. Or at least, I don't think I'm going to mess it up, and he's like, why did you cut out the part where you sound like an idiot? I wanted to keep that in. So that's normally what happens.
Yeah. Well.
But I guess we were going to finish up this episode talking about 2 news articles, because just about all the stats we were looking at were kind of outdated, so these are 2 more recent ones. I guess we'll start out with Greenpeace has now just started accepting Bitcoin donations. The article I'm looking at is from CryptoCoin News. They're saying that this is mostly to get rid of the credit card fees they have to pay to accept for their donations. But this is specifically the Greenpeace, the USA division or section of it. They have now partnered with BitPay to begin accepting Bitcoin donations. The United States branch is now set to become one of the first major international charity organizations to accept Bitcoin, making financial protest more available to those that wish to vote with the wallet.
It's a pretty big and well-known organization, so it's pretty good to see them hopping on.
Yeah. I know Daniel especially, it's probably good he wasn't here for Greenpeace, because Daniel has a very sore spot for environmentalists.
Yeah, he was really excited to talk about this, because apparently he hates whales and the environment and stuff.
I don't hate Greenpeace as much as Daniel does. I kind of laugh at a lot of environmentalists because they talk about, at least this is what I've heard from people, that why the ozone layers is pretty bad, that we talk about the CO2 emissions and everything that we're putting out now, but it turns out quite a bit of the atmosphere was destroyed by some nuclear testing back during the Cold War. I just heard this recently, so, I mean, if someone checks it and it's completely wrong, then call me an idiot.
Well, apparently a bunch of, like, the CFC stuff that was in, like, aerosol things, like hairspray and stuff like that, and there was a lot of CFCs in, like, how they used to make styrofoam, I think. And that's, like...
What is styrofoam made of? Do you have any idea?
It's polystyrene is like the technical term for it. I don't know. I knew a kid who like worked at a chemical plant where they made polystyrene, but I don't really know how it worked. I know it starts out as little beads and then it like expands. But yeah, the CFCs thing, apparently that was actually like the most successful piece of legislation that was ever passed on the environment, like banning CFCs. It like went through like everywhere in the world and like everybody did it, and there was like no problems with it. The problem with the CFCs is it takes a long time for them to like, for the crap that they do to like get out of the atmosphere. But I mean, one thing that people don't know is that there's always a hole in the ozone. Like there always has been and there always will be. It just gets bigger or smaller. It's like just part of how the atmosphere works.
Huh.
It's like at the poles.
So you're saying it's always kind of just changing?
Yeah. And I mean, the reason why people are like freaking out about climate stuff is like, well, I mean, you get people that are saying like, we're destroying the environment. And then you get people who are like, well, the earth has gone through climate changes before. And like, that's true. But the reason people are freaking out is because we're like changing like carbon cycles and stuff a lot. I don't know why we're talking about this. This has nothing to do with the podcast. I'm just
I think we got on. Yeah.
I'm just like spouting off stuff I've been learning. I guess it helps me remember it, but
Daniel's gonna hate us for talking about environmental stuff.
The only thing I really know about, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like I've heard that, or it seems to be kind of a typical thing with non-profit organizations, is that they're kind of inefficient and don't really get much done. But I don't know if that's true. I think I've heard that about Greenpeace, but I don't know. But maybe if they start doing Bitcoin, it'll help.
Hopefully. And that looks like what they're doing, because they're not like something like WikiLeaks where not many of the other payment systems were letting people send donations. They weren't seeming to really have a problem. They're just doing it because I guess it just allows for more of the... Obviously, it opens up more stuff. they probably hope more people are going to donate to it, and then plus they get to keep 100% of the donated funds. They're not losing percentages by credit card companies and other payment processors. So, I mean, it works out for them. It's good to see another organization start accepting Bitcoin. Hopefully it gets the name out there a little bit more. Basically, every single new entity that starts accepting Bitcoin, I mean, obviously depending on their size, it changes how much it is, but it gets it more out there, so that's always good to see.
Yeah, and it's also, according to this article, Greenpeace doesn't take money from corporations or governments, and they rely on individual donations. And we've talked, I mean, probably dozens of times about how Bitcoin is really useful for that. And I mean, we talked to Jason King about that in our interview with him a lot, and he's like a big champion of that. I guess just along with that, with the individual donations and stuff, they effectively receive 100% of what is donated in Bitcoin, which is nice.
Okay. Then also, today, the article came out, this is from bankinnovation.com. The CEO of Square, Jack Dorsey, says that he will be accepting Bitcoin. Square will be adding Bitcoin support in addition to supporting Apple Pay based on comments from CEO Jack Dorsey. I guess Square declined to comment from this article, which doesn't look that great, but CBC News reported that Dorsey visited the new Canada offices for Square and spoke to employees about adding Apple Pay support. We're building a register so that sellers can accept a credit card, so they can accept cash, so they can accept a check, so they can accept Bitcoin, so they can accept any form of payment that comes across the counter, including future ones and burgeoning ones like Apple Pay, says Dorsey. But unfortunately, according to this article, there's no timetable that Square has given. Will it be available around the same time as Apple Pay, which it's saying it's like October? They don't really know. And Bank Innovation had reached out to Square to give them like a timetable, and there hadn't been any update while I'm looking at the article. Hopefully, I mean, if something comes up, I'm sure they'll update the article, but as of right now, there isn't anything on there.
I guess I don't really understand the point of this. Like,
yeah.
Square's like a payment processor, and Bitcoin doesn't need a payment processor. This seems kind of, I don't know, it seems really pointless. I don't know what they think is going to happen with this. I don't know why people would use it, like, versus just, like, I don't know, if they're, like, exchanging stuff, I don't know why someone wouldn't just use BitPay or something that's, like, already established.
Or just like a mycelium.
Yeah, like, something that's already established and that's actually, like, trusted within the Bitcoin community. This seems kind of just, like, retarded. And Daniel and I actually used Square once. He had one of the little ones that you plug into your phone.
Yeah.
Because I owed him money. He's not here, so he can't really comment on this. I can't remember the exact number, but it was like retarded. The fee was like 5% or something like that.
Yeah.
It was really stupid. Like, after we did it, like, I think he was like, yeah, it would be nice to do it because I've never actually used this thing before. I just kind of wanted to test it out. And like, after we used it, he's like, yeah, we should probably never use that to pay me back for anything again because the fee was like so much that it's just retarded. I don't know why you would use it. So I don't know if they're going to have the same kind of fees with Bitcoin, but that would kind of defeat the purpose.
Well, I thought that's what the huge thing that's, like, I didn't really thought about the way you were doing, like, saying that Bitcoin doesn't need a payment processor, but I don't really understand why they would add it, because I thought Square's big thing was being able to use credit cards without having to be at a register. Like, just being able to plug it into your phone.
Yeah, it's retarded. It's like PayPal saying, like, we're going to accept Bitcoin now. Like, you just send it from an address to an address. You don't need anything. Like, you don't need to use a card. Nobody else needs to process your payment. You just send it to someone. It's just, I don't know. Like I said, the only possible thing I could see is if they were, like, exchanging it for fiat, and that's when people just use BitPay or mycelium, like you said.
It does say right in one of the paragraphs in this article, adding Bitcoin support is important for the Bitcoin community, but reputable industry experts have expressed worries that many companies are looking to add Bitcoin more as a marketing ploy than anything else. It's why? It doesn't make sense for you. It's good that I'm glad that there's getting the name out there and that people, like, even if they're not doing too much accepting it because it doesn't really do, like, just being able to accept Bitcoin like this, it's just as easy just to accept it on your phone.
Okay, I just read this one part, and this is maybe a ray of sunshine in this article or whatever. Not that it's like depressing or anything, it's just kind of pointless. But it does say adding Bitcoin support for its thousands of merchants, including Whole Foods and other large retailers. So I guess a good thing that could come out is like, if they're doing this now, any company that uses Square for its payment processing automatically accepts Bitcoin. So I guess maybe it's not as stupid from that perspective. And I guess since Square is kind of like a bigger thing, it will probably have more of an effect than people just starting to use BitPay or something, because more companies already use Square. And then at the end of the article, it says this move would not only help make Square like a wallet-like service for Bitcoin users, but also potentially lead to Bitcoin owners becoming Square users. I don't know what the point of that is. It might also potentially lead to Bitcoin owners becoming Square users. Like, why would you do that?
I don't like paying.
So you're gonna go from using Bitcoin to using some retarded thing where you have to pay dollars and there's like a 5% fee. Yeah, that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, you like to throw your money around a little bit, feel like a big spender, I guess.
But yeah, I mean, I guess the main thing to take out of that sentence is that I guess they're trying to make it kind of like a wallet type of thing.
Yeah.
But I think there are already enough wallets that are probably better than what they're going to do. So yeah, the only thing I'm hoping for is that you can use it at places like Whole Foods or other places that use Square already.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to episode 39. Just for the record, I never said I hate whales or the environment. All of the music in today's show was from Jon Stewart. We'll see you next Thursday.